welcome to today's virtual Candlelight Vigil. Thank you for being here with Reimagine, with the incredible people who have joined this space to share this space with all of us. We are here with some incredible guests this evening to hold space for loss, for adversity, for our relationship with mortality, to process the hardest parts of life in community, and to consider the possibilities for the new directions that might emerge through our contemplation in community of these topics that we so often in our culture tend to push aside. Today we're centering those topics and centering our hearts in honoring those that we've lost, those that we love, and doing it on Zoom, but in connection that may be hard to find elsewhere. We've been doing these vigils now through Reimagine for the last number of years. We've done over 100 of these vigils, and every time we don't know what's going to happen exactly. You will be held in a really lovely space this evening, but we always find that whatever's meant to happen does happen in a really sweet way. And so thank you for being with Reimagine. Can't wait to introduce the guests you see on the screen here for this September Vigil. My name is Brad Wolf, and I am the Executive Director and resident bandmate this evening, as we don't have another featured musician. So I've taken the reins and want to introduce you a little bit just to set the context of what we're doing here together. So Reimagine, we are an organization that aims to see things differently, to reinterpret, to reimagine, like I said, loss, adversity, and mortality, so we might create a more compassionate world. And we think about these painful parts of life that we all experience that are elements that happen in our own personal lives and the world itself. Collectively, we feel them more and more, whether it's loss, whether it's injustice, whether it's pain, loneliness, suffering. The question that we're asking together is what happens when we consider the inverse, and maybe these inverses might happen not just in spite of, but perhaps even because of what's so hard. So what is the relationship between loss and love, between injustice and our desire for equality, between pain and growth, loneliness and community, suffering and service? And we aim together to really be with both of these, but definitely to include what we see on the right side here as part of the equation. So before we go any further, I want to mention that we do have a plan this evening to light candles. So this is the perfect time to, if you don't already have one handy, to go grab one of your candles and come back over here when you have one. And if you don't have one ready, that's okay. There's no pressure to have one, or really there's no pressure to do anything other than just be here with us now. So in terms of logistical elements of Zoom, most of you are familiar, but just to point out a couple things here, the chat this evening is going to be utilized most specifically for an honor ceremony later on in the program, where you're going to have the opportunity to share the names and messages to and for those that you love, that you'd like to honor and bring forth into this space. Now, you can also use the chat to ask any questions of our incredible staff that's here that can assist you with any needs you might have as the session progresses. And additionally, we can use it for communication. So it'd be wonderful right now if everyone wanted to share what you are coming to the space with. What emotions are you coming to the space with today in your hearts, and maybe where you're calling in from, so we can get that chat going and you can meet the other folks that have joined us for today's vigil. Also to note that we do have this closed captioning option available for you. So if you click the closed captioning button, if you would like to see the words that are being said across your screen, you can click the closed captioning button, which can be a very nice tool for some of you. Then you don't have to worry about speaking out loud in this session. There may be an opportunity at the end for some questions. We don't know exactly, again, what's going to happen, but there's no pressure to speak. So you can keep that mute on. At the very end, there'll be one opportunity at a minimum for everybody to join together in some kind of communal sounding of collective love. And then finally, if you're willing to keep your camera on for the session, that would be most wonderful, because it can feel less human perhaps when we can't see each other's faces. That being said, if you just want to relax wherever you are and you want to keep your camera off, or you're on the go, no pressure whatsoever. We appreciate you joining no matter what your circumstance is, and we're just grateful that you are here with us this evening or this morning, depending on where in the world you may be zooming in from. Okay, so with that, I want to turn to my colleague Andy Engel, who helped put this event together today, to share some principles that Reimagine's articulated about the kind of space this is, and also the kind of space this is not. We think it's very important to make sure that everyone here is opting into something that we agree on, some principles that we all share, that creates a safe container for what we're doing here together in this environment. Andy.
What kind of space is this? It's a grieving space. We're all from different backgrounds and beliefs. Let's join together in sorrow. This is a compassionate space. Come here with an open heart, please. And it's a brave space. It's not easy to show up with others, particularly strangers who you don't know. Thank you for coming and taking a risk with us to share your grief. And it's an imperfect space. We may fumble, we may falter along the way in this vigil, and we just ask for your grace. And what kind of space this is not? It's not a blaming space. It's not a political space. It is a space of social justice, but it is not a political space. This could be a space that for folks who are people of faith, people of no faith, we're all welcome here. And it's not a place for solutions to fix things. It's a place to listen and to be present with others.
Beautiful synopsis, Andy. Thank you so much. So if you all align, first of all, with that, then you're in the right place. This would be a great opportunity if you feel like it's not for you. No harm, no foul. You can totally do whatever you like this evening, but just want to make sure everyone here is opting in to the beautiful principles that Andy articulated. And so we're so grateful for your presence and belief in the kind of spaces that we're trying to create within Reimagine. We've created now over 4,000 online spaces to hold experiences for people to process these hard parts of life. We believe spaces like this should be free and accessible and engaging, and we should all have a place in community to turn. And so we're grateful for you who are co-creating this really with us. And so just so you get a sense of what we're doing here together, again, my name's Brad, and I want to acknowledge Dara Cosberg, our colleague, who has made, again, such a beautiful altar that we're going to be sharing. Dara, why don't you wave a little bit so everyone can see there's Dara. Thank you, Dara, for creating this altar that we're going to share on and off throughout the evening that creates, really via Zoom, the kind of centerpiece of our time together. We're about to move into the ceremony where there's a candlelighting blessing where I'll include some more of our colleagues to share that blessing where we can all participate. And then we're going to get into our sacred featured conversation with an incredible person, Julie McFadden, who you'll meet soon enough. And then we're going to move toward another incredible person, Claudia Coenen, who's going to guide us through launching the honor ceremony, where we'll each have a chance to share the people that we love in our hearts, or that we miss, or that we would like to honor in some way in this space this evening. And finally, we'll come back with a candle extinguishing, and then we'll share some closing remarks. And so we're going to go for another hour and 15 minutes till 6:30 Pacific time, and we're just really excited to hold and create this time together. So with that, I would like to invite our newest colleague, Amanda, to kick us off. In actually, before we do that, why don't we actually grab our candles? Why don't we light these candles first? That would be the appropriate uh, course of action here. So wherever you are right now, if you can just grab a match or a lighter, or light the spark of your heart, and we will get these candles turned on. And with that, now I'd like to invite, yes, Amanda, Dara, and Nicole to each read this blessing. And wherever you are, if you'd like to read along out loud, though we maybe can't technically hear you, as we'll talk to Julie about in a bit, it seems that there are some deeper forces that might connect us all. And we believe that this is one of them. We can still feel your presence through the screen.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us sitting here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
And now, as we want to do, if you want to move into gallery mode, there's a button on the top right of your Zoom screens where it's just nice to take 1 second, and if you have a candle lit, to hold your candles up to the screen for a second and just like make eye contact with one another. All these beautiful candles, all these beautiful faces, and perhaps find somebody that you don't know that you want to just hone in on their square. And think to yourself of some loving intention, some kindness to a stranger that you don't know that has shown up here in this space, has been brave by showing up here tonight, not knowing anyone else perhaps in this space, to talk about grief, to talk about hard things. And let's spend about 15 seconds silently on that one person, just thinking of something kind, some intention we have for them in our hearts. And I will pick, just so modeling this behavior, Gail Webb. All right, thank you, everybody. We can keep those candles lit. I don't know what that's like for you, but just that 10-second pause of sharing loving kindness to some stranger does make me feel so grounded and so nice. And it's, what if we were all doing that for more seconds of a day, and we could amplify that to the world? What would we discover? So with that, I'm just so excited for our guest this evening. She's an incredible author that I've come to know through her work most recently. Her name is Julie McFadden, known online as Hospice Nurse Julie. Tonight, she'll be sharing valuable lessons she's learned in her 15 years as an RN in the ICU and in hospice. Her new book, which is incredible, called Nothing to Fear, demystifies end-of-life care and addresses the stigma and fear around death and dying. Julie has over 3 million followers across social media, well-earned followers. She has been featured in Newsweek, USA Today, The Atlantic, Business Insider, The Patient Story, and many other outlets worldwide. She lives and works in California. And, you know, I spent a number of hours reading this new book of yours, and just felt given the work that we do, which is all around loss, and we're going to talk about it, in some ways it's hard to read because it's really real. And we know that sometimes the realest things are sometimes the hardest things to talk about. And that's what you do so well. You open up, demystify, you open up conversation about what's really happens at the end of life, what to really expect, what to know, and how that can change our relationship with love and fear. So Julie, I just want to say it's an incredible book. You're doing such incredible work in the world, and we're so grateful to have you in this space with us.
Thanks, Brad. I was just thinking the same about you. Really, I didn't know what to expect tonight in this first, whatever it's been, 10 minutes. You're just so kind and wonderful. You just really created a great atmosphere, at least for me here in my new apartment. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's bless this new apartment together. Where do we find you this evening in the world that you've just moved to?
I am in Los Angeles, California. I just moved down the street from my old apartment, so I didn't go far. but it's a new place, and I am excited.
That's, isn't it? It's maybe before we get into your living environment, which actually I think does have intersectional concepts that align with our conversation. I do, since this is a vigil, we just lit candles. I'm wondering if there's anyone that you would like to name or honor, some concept, anything you would like to bring into this space yourself this evening.
Well, this what I'm about to say is surprising me, because just yesterday, are we talking about a person? You mean specifically, like someone I'm mourning?
If that's what's in your heart, this is a perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah, I feel like just yesterday I thought of someone through random acts of things I did right throughout the day. I went on Facebook, there was an old memory, something happened, and a friend of mine who died probably 10 years ago, very tragically, popped up on my feed, and it made me think about him and just kind of recall all of these memories. And so I want to think of him tonight. Can I say his name?
Please, we would be honored to hold his name with us.
Yeah, his name is Mike Chadwick. Mike Chadwick.
Thank you, Julie.
That's what I'm thinking about tonight. I'm thinking of many people, but him in particular, because it felt very serendipitous that it came up just last night before I came on today.
And what is it? What you want to say? Another couple things about Mike that you know about why you're feeling him in your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think how everyone, and I believe this is true for everybody, but people who lose, people who die, we're all going to die, which we're going to get into. But he was someone who truly was special. I know everyone thinks everyone's special, but he really was. He was one of those people that was incredible, so special. He almost didn't fit into the world, right? He almost didn't fit into the mold of what normal is. But everyone he met, he amazed for sure. He also struggled a lot because of that, because he was so different and so special, and didn't really fit in and didn't really have the same ideas everyone had. And I think he struggled a lot with that, but that was also his beauty. And that's what I was thinking about last night. And he has 2 children that he left behind, and his one son, neither of them knew him very well because he died really young. But his one son looks just like him. I mean, just like him. So it's eerie and a little strange, but just so beautiful. He had a great laugh, super funny, super creative, loved music. Yeah, just overall great guy.
Well, thank you for bringing him into this space this evening, and we honor Mike and your loss and your relationship. Talking about kind of extraordinariness, you seem to be somebody who, through your writing and through your presence online, is really, head on taking on topics that other people feel fearful around for maybe good reason, but you yourself has really leaned into it. Have you always been somebody that's leaned into the hard things, or what brought you in your own life to be somebody that is able to or wants to lean into these uncomfortable places?
Yes, I have always been like that. Even as a little girl. Even as a little girl, I was always maybe not thinking about, well, no, I was thinking about death as a little girl. I was always thinking about like the big questions. I would ask my mom like really existential questions about like, why are we here? What is this all about? You know, like, why do we work? Why is this the week? Even things like, why is this the weekend? Why do we call this a Monday? Why are we here? What's the point of all of this? Where do we go when we die? I was always like that, always. And I always was seeking answers to that. And I still am to this day. You know, I think I have a better idea of what I think happens after we die and why I think we're here. But I also know that those are just my beliefs. And we're not really going to know until I die. I won't really know what happens, right? So
tell us then, you know, for those, especially those who are unfamiliar with you to date, how that existential query, maybe where it's led you in your life, and how it's manifesting in its present form.
right. Well, so when it came to nursing, you know, nursing came for me kind of out of the blue. It felt a little, I mean, maybe it was destined, but it did feel a little bit like I was just sort of doing it because my friends were doing it and I thought it would be fun. And I was working in a mental health unit, a mental health unit as a behavioral tech, like running groups and stuff. I had my degree in psychology, and a friend of mine went into nursing, and then a woman on the unit fell and cracked her head open and there was blood, and I was there to witness it all. And I remember being so afraid, I ran away from her. I didn't help her. And I ran and got the nurses because I wasn't a nurse yet. And then I saw all the nurses running towards this really scary thing, and running towards the woman with all the blood. And I thought like, whoa, that's incredible. I want to be able to do that. So that kind of sparked my interest in nursing. And then as I started nursing in the ICU, which is where I started out, where we always kept people alive, or at least tried our hardest to keep people alive. That experience is what helped me lean into like, okay, none of us are going to get out of here alive. And if that is the case, how can I as a nurse, and how can we as healthcare workers really start talking to people honestly about their end of life? And like, because we owe it to them, I think, as healthcare workers, we owe it to them. So I think my need to always understand things and seek things out has really helped my nursing career as well, because then I kept trying new things, and it led me to hospice, which led me to really learning and trying to understand death and dying and how to talk about it and what that means for people. And it's just sort of unfolded. My life has just unfolded as I go on, you know, as I go on. I try to let it, is what I do.
And, you know, so you're by the bedside of you know, supporting people that are dying and their families, in such a loving, grounded way. How has, and you're also talking about it and writing about it, how has being amidst death and dying and grief and loss, how has that impacted you, in any way you want to respond, and maybe things that are challenging about it and things that are life and energy giving?
Right. For the most part, it's like the greatest gift I've ever been given. My work is truly like one of the greatest gifts I've ever gotten. I feel so lucky that I get to be a hospice nurse. And I will always want to do it, is what it feels like. Even though I have this whole like hospice nurse Julie thing going, and I do like it, and I like educating the general public, being a hospice nurse is like one of the greatest gifts, because what it really has taught me in my everyday life is about living. And I know it seems cliche and it seems like that's what you should say, but that's the truth. That really is. It really does help me appreciate my health while I have it, because I won't always. And that's that's what my patients say to me most of the time. When people ask me what most people regret is that they didn't appreciate their health. They didn't appreciate the body that they had, the life that they had while they were still well. So it's given me that gift. I try to practice that every day. I really do try to contemplate my own mortality on a daily basis to help me like live in the moment and be here now and be appreciative of like all the little things. And my job has taught me that. And I do have hard days. I just worked a lot, and I had a lot of hard days this past 2 weeks, which is unusual. But it also, even the hard days are like really great gifts, because you're still really connecting to people, and they're hard because people suffer. Not all the time, but they do. And it's hard to always be witness to that. But it also gives me compassion and empathy and understanding for caregivers who have to be there all the time with their loved one who's dying, you know? So even in the bad days, it still gives me a lot of things, even if it feels heavy.
Yeah, and I want to, you talked about how being close to this work has given you a new perspective, or you intentionally think about mortality every day, and how that's helpful for you. You in what chapter is this? Chapter 7. It's advice for the dying in your book. You give us advice for those of us who maybe have 6 months or less to live, is probably the time period that you're talking about. But then you say, here are a few ideas to get you started. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read these ideas that you offer, which I think are so profound. This is so you say, do self.
What did I write?
You say, you get to choose what these last months, weeks, and days on your journey include. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Do the self-growth work you want to do to accept your death. Tell your family and friends that you love them. Ask forgiveness from people you've hurt. Exercise healthy boundaries around your space, which might mean excluding people who may be harmful to you.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself what brings you the most joy, and then do it.
Yeah.
You say, whatever you do, be intentional. This is your end of life journey.
Yeah.
It's interesting because for me, when I read this, thinking about what our purpose as an organization, which is really to take some of the things in our culture that aren't working and think about what happens at the end of life, and the kinds of love and kind of mindful attention that death and loss and painful things can bring up for us, that can actually lead us to respond differently. These are tips for the last 6 months of life, but I'm curious, for me, this is like, how do you see this, if at all, different from what you would say to somebody, to what does it mean to just live your life?
Yeah, I was thinking when you said that this is probably for people with 6 months or less to live, and I think I was focusing on that because this, but I really mean like advice for the dying, and we all are, and that's not meant to be scary. Like, we are all dying. That's advice for everyone, because we're all going to die. And I think when you have 6 months or less to live, it's a little more like in your face, like, here it is. And there's actually things you really can do, like physically get things in order, like really know what you want, how you want your death to actually look, who you want to be there, things like that. But I also think for all of us, if we're, all of us sitting here now, whether we have 6 months or left to live or not, because we don't really know, I think contemplating and really understanding, even contemplating, let's just say we all only have 6 months left. Let's just say that, right? I think contemplating that as a gift to truly try to understand that, like, that could be a real thing. And if that's a real thing, what does that mean for my life right now? Because I don't think it doesn't have to mean jump out of a plane and live the craziest life and travel here and travel there. I mean, it could mean that if that's what you want. But I really think understanding that life could end at any moment has helped me appreciate, like, the sunlight on my face. It's helping me appreciate, like, the smell of this candle. the taste of coffee, the relationships I have. Like there's something that gives like the sweetness back into my life, into my day, because it's helped me realize that it won't always be like this. So it's not meant to, I feel like even me saying that might make people feel a little anxious, thinking about how like we could die. It's not meant for that. It's meant to free you. It's meant to help you become a little more acutely aware of the things that bring you joy, the things that you love. Because your life doesn't have to be this. I think often when we talk about death, people think that means your life has to be this big adventurous thing. And I think that's great if that's what you want. But ultimately, you still have to live a life and work and take care of children and do things, right? So like, how can contemplating your own mortality change your life in the every little day, little bits, right? Appreciating hot water, appreciating your favorite breakfast. That's what I think brings meaning to your life. Like really understanding how special those things are. And I think contemplating death does bring up those things, does help you see how special those things are.
Thank you so much for sharing that and kind of broadening out that perspective for us. That really resonates, I feel like, with what I think is in a lot of people's hearts in this community. And it's inspiring to have that reflected toward us. Maybe you can share a story. Something that's so impressive about your book is you are able to draw on your years of experience with patients that you've supported through their journeys. And these stories and vignettes really are powerful. One of them, I guess I'm just curious how you were able to keep track and remember.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know I've forgotten many people, but there are some people and some stories like you just can't forget. You just can't forget.
So I guess.
I mean, sorry. I have like when I say that, I have images of people, like so many people's faces and like what they look like and how they smiled and just and the most beautiful thing.
Well, I was going to ask one specifically, but I'm wondering if there's any that are just coming to, when you're thinking about it right now, is there someone who's just coming to mind that you want to, some more recent story or something or an older story that just flashes before you that you'd like to share?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's so many that are already in my book, and there's one. I'll do a new one that isn't in my book. How about that? That just happened. Ish. So just happened ish. So people don't think I mean, I keep it as general as possible, but and most of my stories are like, some of them are pretty profound and crazy, but ones that really touch my heart are just because human connection is really amazing. So like, for instance, I met with this woman and her daughter on their front porch where they had like tons of kittens and like, it was hot and buggy, but they were like on their front porch, and the mother was the patient who was signing on to service and the daughter was sitting there. And I had read earlier that she had expressive aphasia, which means she doesn't speak. And usually, because that's usually due to a stroke. Anyway, I had forgotten that. Okay. So we're on the porch and I'm talking, and the patient is like really interacting with me and like pointing and like smiling and going like, yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong, or going like, yes, for sure, and like thumbs up and doing all these things. And I loved it. She was really interactive, and the daughter would speak. And then I go, man, I love how expressive you are. You're a woman of few words, but that's okay. I'll talk enough for both of us. And then I remember that this poor lady is not a woman of few words. She has expressive aphasia, and I'm an idiot. And I was like, and when I said that, her and her daughter still were so kind to me, but I was like, oh my gosh, I just remembered. I'm so sorry. You have expressive aphasia. That's why you're not speaking to me. I am so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. Yada, yada. And they were so kind. They laughed. The daughter laughed. She like laughed, but didn't really make a noise. And then her daughter goes, oh, don't worry. When she really wants to say something, or if she's mad at you, she can talk. And the patient was like, did one of these. Anyway, even that right there, I was like, already, I love them. And then, so I went about my admission, and we were talking and stuff. And then finally the patient was looking really tired. And the daughter was like, Mom, do you want to go inside? And she goes, yeah, I want to go inside. And the daughter was like, okay, I'll go get someone to help you in. So it was just me and the patient on the front porch, and she doesn't speak, right? And she was looking ahead and kind of just like looking off into the distance. And I said, hey, you know, it was so wonderful meeting you. I'm so sorry that I wore you out. You know I talk so much, I probably wore you out. And this lady stopped what she was doing and looked right at me and goes, oh, honey, ain't nothing gonna wear me out. And then I was like, oh my gosh. And I just started laughing. We both started laughing. And then she went inside. So it's just little funny things like that where like she can't speak, she's expressive aphasia. I say, I'm sorry, I wore you out. And then she says this, she looks me dead in the eyes and is like, nothing's gonna wear me out. And it's little things like that, little or big things. I don't know. I think that's a big thing that I will never forget. I will never forget her. And it just warms my heart. And that's just one story, but there's like 50 million like that. And it's why I love my job.
And it's so clear that you love your job, because the way you talk about your patients and the kind of the mark that they leave on you that you're able to then translate to all of us does break down a lot of these barriers that we have around our own fears. You talked about one patient, Lynn, who was in her late 50s dying of ALS, and you say, you know, you don't want to suggest that you're a hero by sharing the story, and but it represents the type of care that people in your profession that you know are kind of advocating for all the time. Maybe you could share the story of Lynn.
Yeah, that one was a hard one. Yeah, so she was dying of ALS, which is a really tough disease where your brain sort of like you're still in there consciously, but your body like around you is failing, and you lose the ability to swallow, to talk, eventually to breathe. And Lynn particularly did not want a breathing tube or a feeding tube. So, and she was young, and her only caregiver was her daughter, and she was young. So it was just a really hard situation. And ALS in general is just hard to manage for anyone. Healthcare workers, the person dealing with it, the loved one helping the person dealing with it. And they were having a lot of issues. And with hospice, there's just a lot of red tape to get through. So like you can get help, but a lot of times you have to basically prove to Medicare, who's paying for hospice for this patient, that this patient needs more help. So like symptoms are unmanaged, this patient needs more help. We need to have a nurse in there 24 hours a day. And I basically had to keep proving that to my company, because unfortunately, even the best companies, it's still a money thing, right? So it's still like, it costs a lot of money to do that. Do they really need it? Can the person, do they really need it? Like what's going on? And I was getting a lot of pushback from my company because this person had a continuous care nurse in their home, which means a 24-hour nurse for multiple days, which is really expensive. And they were trying to pull that nurse out and have the daughter do all the things. And it was just one of those days where I lost my shit, for lack of a better word, because I was just sick of being like, I was like, I'm the one here looking at what's happening. I'm telling you, they need the continuous care nurse. Quit making me try to, like, I can prove, I'm telling you, do you believe me or not? I'll write it all up. So just one of those things where I wanted to show that, like, not just me, but healthcare workers in general, for the most part, are fighting for you. They're fighting for you. They're working within a system that is not the greatest, and is not patient focused, no matter what people say. Not just hospice, but our medical system in general is not patient focused. It's money focused, and nurses and doctors have to work around things to try to get things for patients. So that was just one of the times where, you know, I had to like yell and I would never normally do this, but like you get to the end of your rope sometimes when you're witnessing people suffer and then you're not getting what you need because of money. And it's like, not on my watch. Not on my watch. Like that's the one thing that will get me super fired up if I think that's happening. Anyway, Lynn died very peacefully, thankfully, but it was really hard. And there was a lot of fights like that where you really had to push and push and push to get what you need for patients. So I always feel for my fellow healthcare workers. It can be hard.
And what we're working on right now, and we're so excited about it, Reimagine, is we're working on a program actually for physicians and for death doulas right now. We're working with Stanford Medicine to reimagine doctoring, because and then with death doulas, who people like yourself have to you've chosen to do this amazing work of being with people facing hard things, and you yourself as a human being have hard things going on in your life. And in our medical system, as you described, our system is oriented around preventing suffering and death. And so we might not have the healthiest, most holistic perspective on loss, on death, when our whole orientation medically is to prevent it. And then on top of that, you're dealing with your own life and your own traumas and your own background. How can somebody stay present,
Right.
Amongst all those forces?
Are you asking me? Are you
Yes.
Yes. I can tell you how I do it. And the way I do it is by I have really, really good boundaries, but I'm only able to have really good boundaries because I work for a unionized hospital, which means I have a union that backs me and helps me be able to say no to things that I need to say no to. Because a lot of times you're overworked, so you don't have the time to provide the kind of care you want to provide. So I don't work full time as a nurse. I didn't even before hospice nurse Julie. I work per diem, which means I usually work almost full-time hours, but when you work per diem, you can kind of pick and choose when you work. And that really helps me have a good work-life balance and boundaries with work. I think generally speaking, anyone working in healthcare, I could start a whole nother social media page about this, but I think most people need to really make healthcare work for them versus them working for healthcare, because it's really hard to have good boundaries and have a good work-life balance when you work as a full-time nurse, or like if you're working for a hospital or for a company. It's really, really hard to do that. So I've only been able to do that by not working full-time and or working per diem. And I also, which is a whole nother story, but I also, I'm in recovery. I'm in a 12-step program, and that program personally for me, nothing to do with work, has really helped me learn how to navigate my life and have really good, again, like balance in my life. Without that, it'd be hard.
Well, I'm so glad that you are going through your own recovery process, and that you're where you are and you're taking control of your life and have your own boundaries. And I think that's so respectable, to know oneself and to put up those boundaries for yourself. And I think that's something that's really hard when you care about people,
Yeah.
and you're a caregiver.
Yes, I think generally speaking, if beyond the whole like working per diem and things like that, if anyone listening is a caregiver or works in healthcare or just has someone, I think boundaries is the key. Like I have to trust that my other healthcare workers can do just as good of a job as I can. So when I leave, I have to trust that they will take care of what I left off. Right. So I have to I've worked on that for many years. I've been a nurse for 16 years. So I wasn't always good at that, but now I am, only because I have to be okay. I have to be okay in order to keep working, in order to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, so grateful that you are doing it, and that there's so many of you, that you're representing through your own voice, that are doing this work on all of our behalf, in hospice, in nursing, in healthcare generally. I saw a question in the chat that I want to bring up. It was a couple chats ago. It was about heaven and hell, and spirit. And I had a question about spirituality. There's a chapter in your book that is about phenomena that take place at the end of life. And you've, having sat by the bedside of so many people transitioning, what can you tell us about either that concept of heaven and hell, maybe more narrowly, but maybe more broadly, some of the types of things that you've seen that we maybe hear stories about that feel like there might be something more connecting us, or there's something, I don't know how you would even explain these phenomenon.
Yeah. So, okay. So one, I always say, first off, I don't know what happens after we die. I always want to like preface that I never want to act or feel like I know for sure. I just know what I've seen, and that's how I feel and like what I believe. But that's just my opinion. I think it's important because that's how I stay open, by like not only setting my mind on like, this is it, right? And this is the only belief I'm going to have. So just with that, that's my little preface. So the first thing I noticed when I started becoming a hospice nurse that was so magical to me is that our bodies are biologically built to die. So even nothing to do with spirituality, just biologically watching someone naturally die, to me as a hospice nurse who came from an ICU nurse, as an ICU nurse, was like mind-blowing and beautiful in its right. Like that right there was spiritual, because it was like, wow, our bodies like really know how to die. This is beautiful. And then the more and more I got to witness people taking their last breaths, the more, and because I think it wasn't my grief to be had, like it wasn't my loved one. I was just sort of the witness of it. I could see the beauty in it. And to me, it really did feel just like when a baby is born. Like when I see a baby being born, and when I see someone taking their last breath, it's like the same feeling to me. And like usually, at least the way it feels to me, is like time stands still. It's really expansive. Like something feels like there is a beautiful shift in the room. And on top of that, I witness like love and action, because I see the family members usually there, and it's peaceful and it's beautiful, and it's just so profound. And to me, it has always made me feel like we are going to a place that feels like home, more like home than here ever could, is what it feels like to me. And of course, as far as the phenomena, there are phenomena that happen at the end of life that it's just like, that's like a fact. We don't know why it happens, but it does. And it happens so often that we actually educate about it. And one of those phenomena is people seeing dead family, dead relatives, dead friends, dead pets, angels, hearing music, seeing beautiful lights. They have the rally sometimes, which is when like someone's looks like they're really close to death, and then suddenly they have a good couple days where they're able to wake up and say their final last words and have a great day, and then die suddenly after. Many people will like choose when they're going to die. They'll wait for everyone to get there. They'll wait for everyone to leave. There's just if you're around it long enough, it's hard to deny it. I don't know what it all means, but it's hard not to believe there's something going on, because it's just so common. It's just so common that people are saying that they see, my parents came to see me and they told me everything's going to be okay, and I'm not worried anymore. That has literally happened to me so many times as a hospice nurse that I can't even think of a distinct time, because it's happened so much. It's not like a once in a while thing. It's like all the time. People are always saying this. So, yeah.
So does that, what I'd like to say is, in this space here, or let me preface, your book is incredible, because why I think everyone should get this book. It was challenging for me to read, even as someone who's close to this work, because it really brings you in to the truth of what happens from kind of before you die, really through the process, all the things to expect, what happens to our bodies, what about each of these medications, all the ways how hospice works, what to expect, what's the difference between hospice and palliative medicine. So many factual, just truths about life that we are not educated around. And even a lot of the literature out there doesn't really get into these really hard truths about what happens, which are actually, as you described, freeing in so many ways, and can be freeing if you're educated. And so that's why I think it's just a really powerful book for people. Yes, there's these vignettes, but it's really just gives a lot of clarity where there often is not.
Yes. Yeah, I think that was the only thing when my publishers asked me like what I wanted in the book, I was just like, I need this to be an educational resource. Like it doesn't have to be, I want stories in it because people like the stories and I like stories too. It's to make it so it's a little easier to read, but it's meant to be a resource. It's meant to be like pick it up, look at the chapter you want to read that chapter to figure out what the heck is going on. You know what I mean? It's to help you it can help anyone, but also if you're going through this right now and you're wondering what the heck am I supposed to be doing? What's the next step? I wanted someone to have a resource because I really believe, and I've seen this with my own eyes over and over again over the years of being a hospice nurse, people who were unafraid to learn about what their specific disease was going to look like while they were dying, like how is it going to progress? What can I expect? What can we do about it? They lived better and they died better. And that's why my main purpose is to educate, because I think it truly frees you. It helps you be, the book is called Nothing to Fear, right? But I argued for it to be called Normal to Fear, which I lost. I lost, but because it is normal to fear. And like, just because you fear it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it and plan for it. And guess what? The more you do, the less you will fear. And I know that just through experience. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
No. I mean, I wrote a children's book once and they changed my title from Essays Suck. This is a book for kids. It was Essays Suck or Do They? To Breakfast on Mars. And it was like, so in the change in title that you're sharing is actually quite profound as a difference. Nothing to fear versus normal to fear. And I think I'm disappointed. No offense to your wonderful publisher. I'm so grateful they published this book. But I really appreciate the distinction, because I think that's, as someone who, there's this movement, the death positive movement. And I'm not one to really love that term, because it's like, it's something that happens to us that, from my perspective, that it's part of life. And as are so many of these traumas that we experience. And so how do we respond? It's normal for these things to be hard and to fear them. And so I just really deeply, I don't know, I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to say that anywhere I go because I want everyone to know. I'm like, I really want it to be normal to fear. They let me put I did put a little caveat in there somewhere that says something like that it's not nothing to fear, it's normal to fear. But I do get it. It's a little catchier. I mean, they're trying to sell books.
Well, hopefully they're doing a good job, because what's important is what's inside the book. So we're kind of wrapping up this portion of the conversation, and I want to acknowledge and I appreciate everyone who's here. People come to this space, perhaps more so, and I don't, everyone's here for their own reasons. We saw in the chat, and we're going to hear more about who people are honoring, but as an opportunity to process grief and loss. And I also want to acknowledge it might be hard for people here to listen to conversation about death and dying, and also be able to hold, grief kind of at the same time. That can be challenging. So I just thank everybody who is here and has been open and willing to hear Julie speak so eloquently about these topics. I'm wondering, you also have a chapter on grief, and if you could take just a second to address everyone here who we each have our own grief. You know, we talk about we can drown in an ocean, we can drown in 3 inches of water. So in some ways, we each are dealing with our own pain, whatever magnitude it might be. What could you tell us, or about grief and about facing kind of this period of grappling with loss and the hard things from your vantage point, and for the people that are here this evening, a message to us from you.
Yeah. So I always like to say that, grief is, it's not my expertise. I'm not trained in like grief counseling. And so anything I say about grief is just from what I've witnessed as like a hospice nurse and just my own personal tragedies and my grief and like how I've dealt with those things. And I always feel like it's just so important generally to have a place like this where you don't have to make anything right. You don't have to try to resist what you're feeling. Because I think, at least for me, my own experience, like I don't like feeling bad. I don't like feeling bad. I don't like feeling sad. I want to know exactly how it's going to go. I want to know exactly when this is going to end. When am I going to feel better? How do I feel better? And it's just not how it works. And that sucks. That's hard. It's hard to live in this gray area of unknowing and feeling, not feeling well, and like your world moving on, but you're still stuck in this moment of like, wait a minute, why is the world still spinning and my person isn't here? And I'm feeling like this, and there's no one understands, and I'm alone. And I think I'm saying all this because I think it's important that it was always important for me to like acknowledge that I felt like that, and to like be in a place like this where other people understood that, where it was okay to be half here, half not, like, and feel the pain that grief can, and grief can feel many, you can feel many things, but like the pain of grief, the pain of loss. And the one thing I always say about caregivers, like, I don't know if there are any caregivers here, people who did care for their loved ones while they died, but many caregivers of mine would reluctantly say that, the first feeling they felt was relief. Like when their loved one died, they felt relief because it was finally over, for them and for their loved one and for them. And then they felt guilt and shame for like feeling relief. And I just like to say that because that's so common. That's so common. Almost anyone that's a caregiver has said that to me. And then the pain and boredom and the weirdness it feels when they're gone, because now what do they do with their time? It's just complicated. It's just complicated. And that's the only thing I've learned with grief, is that it's complicated. And I think our world, we live in a society, I'll wrap up with this, but I feel like we just live in this society where it's like, how are you? Good, me too. Like no one says the truth of what's happening. And if you do, it's kind of like, what's wrong? What happened? Why? Oh, at least they're in a better place. I'm sorry. You're never allowed to just like feel how you feel. You know how like Winnie the Pooh, when like Eeyore just walked around like sad all the time, and like no one ever forced Eeyore to like be different and like feel differently, which not that we want to all walk around like that, but I love that they just allowed Eeyore to be sad and let him and still be at the party and not have to explain himself for being sad. And I think we need a little more of that. So I'm glad we have a space like this where we're allowed just to be however it is.
Thank you, Julie. You can be Eeyore, you can be Winnie, you can be Tigger. You can be a non Pooh-based character in this space.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to you in a bit if you're able to hang on with us. But I want to transition. First of all, everyone, if you in the chat can share some deep gratitude for Julie, for her time and wisdom and humanness in this space, and then just for her work overall in her life, and just wishing you the best and continued connection to your own humanity through this journey that you're on that has been so inspiring for all of us. And I hope you can check out the chat as you see everyone just so grateful for you. Let's see. And we'll come back to you in a bit, but I want to now introduce, as we move into the honor ceremony, our next fabulous guest, Claudia Coenen. Claudia is someone I've had a chance to get to know, and she is incredible. She's a thanatologist, a grief counselor. She also has a background in music and dance and expressive art, and this all enables her to use her creativity as a method for healing. In private practice, Claudia provides compassionate counseling to clients suffering from loss due to the death of a person close to them. She also works with non-death loss, and there are so many losses that we experience here in this space, not just death loss that we're talking about, which include things like divorce, relocation, life transitions, terminal illness, so many losses. Claudia is also a Reimagine collaborator, and we're so grateful for the work you've done with us in all the ways. Claudia is the author of Shattered by Grief, Picking Up the Pieces to Become Whole Again, and then also the Creative Toolkit for Working with Grief and Bereavement, A Practitioner's Guide. And finally, maybe not even finally, there's more, but the Karuna cards is an incredible offering of yours. These are creative prompts for grief and difficult transitions. And your latest book, Seasons of Grief, Creative Interpretations to Support Bereaved People, includes reflections on life, on the life cycle of grief, and includes 17 chapters from 17 heart-centered therapists, end-of-life practitioners, artists, and poets. And I'm grateful that I was included in a little vignette speaking about my own relationship with music. You're so incredible, and we're so grateful you're here to hold us as we enter into the most sacred part of this time together, which is our honor ceremony.
Thank you, Brad. So usually when I do these, I'm sort of doing more what Julie did and talking about grief and bereavement and how we get through it, and being a little bit more educational. But tonight I'm going to share with you, because we're entering into an honor ceremony, about the people that we've lost. So I'm going to share with you who I mourn. And I want to, before I tell you the 4 most important people that I'm mourning for the rest of my life, I want to just say that my mindset around this is, number one, to feel what it feels like, because I am also not interested in toxic positivity, but to feel it and to allow myself to feel all of the difficult emotions, to really sort of dive into them and express them in whatever way that I can. And I personally find that expressing them through creativity is very helpful to me. And that takes a lot of different forms. I also am really interested in how we get through all of the different tragedies and transitions in our lives, and how we are resilient, how we approach those, acknowledging how hard it is, and then approaching it with flexibility, elasticity, how we adapt to these things, and how we find a way to live fully with the relationship that we had, and also because that's no longer there. So I think that's really important to me, and it's a through line throughout my whole life, because the first 2 people that I lost that were very important to me were my paternal grandparents, my Oma and Opa. And they were both very wise people. Opa in particular, they had fled Nazi Germany in 1939. And I was so impressed with them, because what they did is, when they came to this country, my grandfather went and bought used books on American history, because he wanted to learn about his new country. So he set an example for me about how to get through tragedy by learning about things, by growing through it, by accepting what happened and then making the most of it, which he did very, very well. And I asked him when I was about 13 or 14, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? And he said, life is for learning. And that's also been a motto of mine all along. Oma was warm and loving in a way that she probably wasn't with my father, because she had a baby in 1924, and she was a very wealthy German woman. When I asked her, what did you cook when you were a newlywed? She said, well, I sat down with my chef at the beginning of the week. So she didn't learn to cook till she was 45 years old. So, but she was incredibly warm with her grandchildren. And that made me really understand that there was the possibility of unconditional love, which my mother was kind of conditional, but Oma was not. So they've been gone a very long time. Opa died in the 1970s and Oma died 36 years ago. And I still miss them terribly all the time. I wish I could pick up the phone and talk to Oma and let her know. And Opa is very present in my life in terms of the way that I think about things and in terms of how I approach difficulty in my life, and then also how I approach my work, to want to learn as much as I can about the different people that I work with, and also to develop new tools to help other people. More recently, though, I had fallen in love with a lovely man, Albie Coenen, and we were going about our lives, doing the things that we do, buying houses, creating children, having careers, raising the kids, doing all of those things. And 4 days after his 50th birthday, he had a heart attack. And we were on vacation, and that was very shocking. It was not expected at all. And I was in New Mexico, my kids were home in New York, and I felt completely shattered, which is why my first book is called Shattered by Grief, Picking Up the Pieces to Become Whole Again, because it felt like I needed to figure out how to be whole. Julie talked a lot about the gifts that she finds in her work and in the people that she works with. And I thought about that too when Albie died. In a strange way, I wanted to consider the gifts of our relationship. I wanted to consider who he was for me and how I grew from being in relationship with him, and then how I could pull some of his qualities through in my life. And that's why I call my work the Karuna Project, because he wrote the word Karuna on top of all his letters. So that helps me keep him alive. So anyway, after he died and I was launching the kids, I decided that I wanted to be in relationship again, and I fell in love and I got married again, and he died 22 months ago. So here I am again in the same situation, in a very different way, because I'm in a different place in my life. But it really taught me how to really be with somebody who's dying, because in this case, we had a diagnosis and we had about 6 weeks where we could do those things that Julie talked about, where we could share what he needed, let him know how loved he was, and help him have a peaceful death, and for us to have the real conversations about how much we loved each other. So I think that's really important. So I'm just going to close this part before I invite you to write your names, the names of the people that you love, in the chat, and anything else that you want to say about them. I just want to read you one of the Karuna cards. It's about remembering. Our memories keep us connected to those who are no longer with us. Memories can also shape how we want to live now. Remembering can also be remembering as you put yourself back together again. So now I want to invite you to use the chat to write the names of the people that you're honoring, and a little bit more, anything you want to say about them. And Brad's going to play some music, but I'm going to start it off with a little bell.
So just want to take a beat here, and I'm just scrolling back up through this incredible, powerful, gorgeous, moving chat that you all co-created together just now with these names and these messages. And maybe we can just take one collective breath together, maybe 3 collective breaths, just to ground ourselves in what we just did. Claudia, would you like to lead us in the 3 breaths?
Sure. So let's all sit. If you can put your feet on the ground, that would be really helpful. Just roll your shoulders a little bit. And let's take a deep breath in. And let it go. And again. And on this last breath, let's just open our hearts in love for all the people who have passed. And breathe out that love.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much for leading us into that honor ceremony. And thanks to everybody for participating. Even if, first of all, just because the music stopped and we've theoretically moved on to a new section of the program, don't feel like you can no longer add names on the right side here. And even if you didn't put a name in there, we want to hold all the names. They're also in your hearts. So thank you to everybody for participating with us in all these different ways tonight. We're going to now move toward the candle extinguishing blessing that we have to close out this piece of the ceremony. I'm going to pull back open a slide and invite Claudia and Julie to come back and join me for this blessing as we ultimately extinguish our candles here. After we read this 3 times together as a group, I'll then count down from 3 and we'll all be invited to simultaneously extinguish our candles. If for some reason you don't want to extinguish your candle and want to keep your candle lit, that is also great. If you don't have a candle to extinguish with us, feel free, if it moves you, to take a deep breath with us and certainly just exhale, and we'll hold the same meaning in our hearts for what you're doing as we're all experiencing together. So I'll begin here. And again, feel free to read along with me wherever you are. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
I am so sorry. I cannot see what everyone's seeing to read it.
It's all good.
Sorry.
I got you. By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. Now we'll stop sharing and this could be helpful. On the count of 3, 3, 2, 1. So thank you so much. That concludes the formal ceremony this evening. And again, I want to thank, I have a couple more things to share, but want to, again, share our gratitude for the staff and for Julie and Claudia and all of you for being here and for all of the names that you placed in the chat and all the honoring that took place here this evening. I do want to call my wonderful colleague Andy back to join us and join me in sharing some upcoming things that we have on our docket at Reimagine that might be of interest to some of, if not all of you. Andy, if you want to share a little bit about this, would be fabulous.
Sure. So apropos of Claudia's expertise in ambiguous loss, we have a series called Pieces of Me identity loss and ambiguous grief this month. Our identities are not fixed. They evolve and dissolve over time, and often friends and family and society ignore or dismiss the sorrow that's associated with transitions of our selfhood. And these losses can occur across the life cycle, leaving home, breakups, estrangement, job termination, infertility, menopause. We'll be covering a lot of these in this 3-part series. I hope you can join us. We've got thanatologist Colin Perry, caregiving advocate Jessica Guthrie, who some of you may have heard speak in our caregiving series in May. We've got former pastor Rich Perez, death doula and breathwork leader Sundari Malcolm, and ritual leaders Sarah Luria and Brenda Salgado, grief educator Stephanie Sarrazin. The author of the book Soul Broken is our thought partner, and she's helped us develop this series. And along with this series, we have collaborator events. We have a community of collaborators, folks like Claudia, who host events on our platform, and you can too. We've been encouraging this cohort to present programs that are related to our monthly themes. So please check out these additional events and consider hosting your own program on our platform in the future. Also upcoming, we've got Room for Grief on September 19th. That's being led by Mangda Sengwan Peng. It's held every Thursday of the month. I hope you can join us for that. And also we've got our Vigil coming up on October 9th with poets Danusha Lamaris and Naomi Shihab Nye. They will be reading from their newest collections of verse. Danusha has her new book, Blade by Blade. And in that work, she's seeking a way back to joy following the deaths of her son and her brother by finding wonder in nature. And Naomi's newest book is Grace Notes, Poems About Families. And that's it for upcoming programs.
I just want to give a big mental round of applause to Andy for putting together such incredible programs at Reimagine. You're just bringing such incredible guests into our midst, including the folks that are here this evening. So thank you, Andy, for this continued and excellent support of this community. Right, so I wanted to share, I was mentioning this before about what the work we're doing with Stanford and the National End-of-Life Doulas Alliance. But we've been working for the last year plus, almost many years now, on incubating this idea that we've been kind of doing in the background that's finally percolating outward, where we're trying to really rewire and create a safe space and a social space in a social media context where we can actually process the real parts of life in healthy ways that lead to healing and growth, based really on the science of post-traumatic growth, which talks about sharing stories in a safe community, practicing emotional regulation, creating new narratives for ourselves, and ultimately doing acts of service and creativity, big or small, in the areas of our pain. And why we like this so much is because when we think about how the world's going to be a better place, how we respond, not just to our personal losses, but to the mounting kinds of global challenges on top of those, how do we respond in healthy ways? How do we reverse what's happening? How do we stay steadfast? And we're trying to create tools to allow us to come into right relation with the hard parts of life, so that total story is told, like we're doing here this evening. And we really want you to be part of shaping that future with us. And so we're learning and growing together through these tools we're building. And we'd be so grateful if Nicole, I think, has a survey that we could put at the end of this, or Andy, someone in our team has a survey we can put at the end of this program that you can fill out. And there's opportunities there if you're interested in getting involved in this platform, trying it out. We've had cohorts of people going through it already who are helping shape it and reporting back really powerful results. Folks who have had COVID losses in their life, folks who are dealing with collective trauma from the war that's taking place in the Middle East on all kinds of different sides. How do we process, and then all the personal losses that are happening in our lives as well. So this platform is aimed at all of that, and really we're excited to build that with you. Okay, so Claudia and Julie, I try to do this thing where I write a little poem. I took like 30 seconds as I was listening to Claudia draft this 5-line poem based on what we were sharing today. And it's 5 lines, 3 syllables each, but it's just a little bit of gratitude for each of you. And they always seem to work. It's the format. Okay, let's be real. That's the name of the poem. So thanks to both of you. What is real? Life is real. Death is real. You show us love is real. So thank you so much. That's how I felt with both of you this evening. And I also want to give a big shout out to Dara, to Nicole, to Andy, to Amanda, and to all the Reimagine staff who are here and even not here, and then also to all of you who showed up here this evening with your loved ones in your hearts. Thank you. Every month we do this, every month. Sad but glad to mourn, grieve, grow, and love together. So thank you again for being here. I do have to want to make one last, okay, we're getting to the end. I do have one more question I want to ask to our hosts, and if you bear with me for like 2 more minutes. But just one note I want to make is that Reimagine, we are a nonprofit organization. We're only supported by the kindness and generosity of those of you out there. And our model is such that we try to make all these programs free and accessible, so everyone has access. And the only way that works is some people are kind of helping those who maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to join. And so that's how we do it. So if you're willing to make a contribution and join our Catalyst Circle, there's some notes in the chat right now. And please, if you're interested in being a philanthropic supporter of our work, that means everything to this community. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, the community wouldn't exist without all of you being here. So the most important thing is that you're taking these brave steps forward to join us in these spaces. Now, I just want to circle back before we leave now, just to Julie, who's had a chance to take this all in with us and has been such a wonderful guest. I have 3 just quick 1-sentence answers, so we'll get out of here. In 1 sentence, what has loss taught you about life?
In 1 sentence, what has loss taught me about life? That will be okay no matter what.
What are you reimagining?
What's important to me?
And what's a dream that you have for all of us here?
Oh man.
No pressure.
I know, right? A dream for all of us here. I think a dream I'd have for all of us here would to know and to really know and feel that we're all connected truly. We're all one. Well,
thank you so much, you and Claudia and everyone, for staying on a couple extra minutes with us. Any final, I guess, Julie, any final reflection you want to share about anything that's come up for you?
No, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that we all came together tonight, that this exists, that we're all here. Pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I like to say, if you think about our lives, there is a reason why we're all here. Our lives have culminated. This is the culmination of all of our lives on Earth right now in this moment. Everything has led us to this moment, and whatever path we've been on somehow has brought us in the only moment we have, which is right now. And that's a pretty profound idea if you think truly about all the reasons why you are here tonight and all the things that brought you into some crazy online space where we're listening to you know, a nurse with a book about hospice care, and creatives who have gone and are mourning their own, you know, losses, and we're all just coming together on our own stories that have brought us to this place, and it's weird and it's wild and it's amazing. And so with that, we like to end these events to make sure everyone has a chance to have their voice in the space, which is the best sound, even though we know on Zoom it could actually be the worst sound. There's only one thing that does tend to sound good on Zoom, and that is the word love, believe it or not. It's like there's a glitch in the system that if we say the word love at the same time, elongated, like we're singing it out to each other, it actually sounds not horrible. Let's just leave it at that. So we're going to unmute, and on the count of 3, why don't we all just let out, like sing out the word love cacophonously, like a deep, maybe like a 10-second singing version of the word love. We don't always, sometimes we say it, but let's just like sing it out together, and let's just hear what love sounds like sung on Zoom. Maybe we can break the system together, and we'll see you again soon. On the count of 3, unmute yourselves, and we'll go from there. Have a great night, everyone. 3, 2, 1. Love.
Love.